Jonathan is worried, really worried. For some time now, his good friend Marilyn has been acting differently than usual. She is usually easygoing and cheerful, but now she has become quite withdrawn. She seems almost anxious. Jonathan doesn't recognize this side of Marilyn. When Jonathan visits his friend, he talks to her about it. He tries to find out how he might be able to help her. He hopes that she might open up to him in a familiar atmosphere. When Jonathan tries to talk to her, Marilyn starts to cry. She just says that something terrible has happened. She can't talk about it. But it's important to Jonathan to support his girlfriend. He promises that she can talk to him about anything. He asks if she has been harassed or abused by someone, but Marilyn says no. She says it's too bad and that he can't imagine what happened. 2 months after this conversation, Marilyn disappears. And to this day, no one knows what happened to the young woman. It's the end of 2007. Coldplay's song Viva la Vida is playing non-stop on the radio every day. The modern classic No Country for Old Men is showing in theaters. And above all, the Christmas season and a lot of New Year's Eve parties are on the agenda. Today, this is a time that many look back on with nostalgia. At the time, however, Marilyn Bergeron had little time for going to the movies or parties. She already had enough to do. When it came to music, however, the 24-year-old kept up with the latest trends. She worked at an instrument store in her hometown of Montreal, Steve's Music Store. The job was a perfect fit for Marilyn. Music means everything to her, not only as a fan, but also as an artist. She has been playing guitar since she was 10 and is always on the lookout for people to jam with and maybe even start a band. That was one of the reasons she wanted to move to Montreal in her early 20s. The Canadian city has a fairly active music scene where Marilyn quickly built up a good network. She has been living there in her own small apartment since 2005. In addition to her job in the music business, she also works as a freelance camerawoman. As wonderful as the creative industry is, she still seems to long for a more conventional job. Recently, the 24-year-old has been toying with the idea of training to become a flight attendant. But Marilyn is still young. She has more than enough time to fulfill her dreams. On December 10th, 2007, Marilyn's boyfriend Jonathan is standing at her door. That evening, Marilyn plans to go out with her friend. However, when Jonathan enters, the mood is anything but festive. The apartment is completely dark. The lights, television, and stereo are all turned off. Marilyn is simply sitting there, staring sadly into the void. Jonathan decides to try to cheer her up a little, but when the two attend a party that evening, Marilyn feels worse and worse. Not physically, but she seems totally anxious. It gets so extreme that Jonathan decides to take his girlfriend straight home. There, he tries to take care of her as best he can. As soon as the two are in Marilyn's apartment, the young woman begins to cry violently. But she doesn't want to tell Jonathan what is weighing so heavily on her mind. He stays with her for about 3 or 4 hours and tries to talk to her, but Marilyn remains tight-lipped. Jonathan can't get through to her. He even asks if someone has hurt her, if she has witnessed a murder or something else. One can only imagine how hard Marilyn must have been crying to make Jonathan think such things. But the 24-year-old just says no. It's worse than that. He can't imagine what she's been through. Her friend feels that Marilyn wants to protect him from something or someone, and that's why she's not saying anything. But no matter how hard he tries, if Marilyn can't or won't say what's wrong, there's only so much he can do to help her. Jonathan isn't the only person in Marilyn's circle who notices that something is wrong. She already seems different when she visits her parents for Christmas. At first, her parents don't think much of it. They don't see their daughter all the time, and maybe Marilyn is just having a bad day. But the following month, in January 2008, she contacts her parents. She confides in her mother on the phone, at least to a certain extent. She says she is afraid to live alone in Montreal. She no longer feels comfortable in the city, even though she has her apartment, her job, and her friends there. Her parents are naturally worried and imagine the worst-case scenarios. Her mother asks Marilyn what's wrong, whether she's heartbroken, has gotten involved in drugs, or has any debts. The young woman denies everything. When her mother asks her if she has been the victim of an assault, Marilyn starts crying again, but says nothing more. Only that she simply doesn't want to be in Montreal anymore because she has fallen in with the wrong crowd. Unfortunately, that's all she will say. Her sister Natalie is also unable to get through to her. It is clear that there are people in Marilyn's circle who are trying to help her, people she could talk to. But something is holding Marilyn back. Something or someone must be making her feel that she cannot confide in anyone at this time. Another month later, on February 10th, 2008, Marilyn calls her mother again. Once again, she says she is afraid to be alone in her apartment. Her mother urges her to come home. Her parents live in Quebec, about 250 kilometers from Montreal. Marilyn agrees and takes the bus home that same evening. She promises her mother that she will finally tell her everything as soon as she arrives. But she doesn't. Her mother offers to help her find psychological support, but Marilyn doesn't take her up on that either. Her parents are becoming increasingly concerned, but at least now they can keep an eye on her. Marilyn returns to Montreal twice that week to collect her belongings. She is last there on February 15th to clear out her apartment with her parents. From February 16th, she is finally living with her parents again. However, she does not even spend 24 hours in her new home, because the very next day, Marilyn Bergeron disappears forever. Marilyn wants to spend the morning of February 17th, 2008, taking a walk through Quebec City. Her parents certainly don't think it's a bad idea. Whatever is going on with the 24-year-old, she urgently needs to relax and clear her head. Marilyn puts on her thick black jacket and takes her sunglasses with her. She also pockets her credit card, although she leaves all her other documents at home. She says she wants to take her time, but will be back in a few hours. Around 11 a.m., Marilyn is filmed at an ATM. She must have gone there directly from home. She inserts her credit card and wants to withdraw $60 in cash, but the transaction is not authorized. When the withdrawal is denied, Marilyn looks cautiously over her left shoulder several times. Then she turns around. It has never been determined where Marilyn spent the next few hours. Perhaps she really did just go on her planned walk through Quebec. However, she must have either been constantly on the move for the next few hours or gotten on a train or bus in between. Because at 4 p.m., she is suddenly a good 20 kilometers away from her parents' house. At 4:03 p.m., she uses her credit card to buy a coffee at a branch of the Café Depot chain. A walker can easily cover 4 to 5 kilometers per hour on flat terrain. But it seems more likely that Marilyn used public transportation at some point, or maybe even a car. Because even though the Café Depot no longer exists at that location, and the area looks a little different today, Google Maps doesn't exactly make it look like a walker-friendly area. There are more parking lots than sidewalks or green spaces along the way. At least there is a bus stop nearby in addition to the parking lots. Maybe Marilyn used it to get there. Even then, it would still be unclear what her destination was. Café Depot was on every corner back then. She wouldn't have had to travel 20 kilometers for that. In any case, The purchase of the coffee is the last transaction charged to the credit card. After that, the young woman's trail goes cold. When Marilyn still hasn't returned from her supposed walk in the evening, her parents immediately alert the police. The investigators quickly learn about her visit to the bank and later to the cafe. A search for Marilyn is launched, but it is unsuccessful. Hours turn into days, then weeks, then months. There is no sign of life from Marilyn Bergeron. However, the case seems like a sad but clear-cut matter to the investigators. A young woman who was apparently in an exceptional mental state disappears. It sounds to the police as if Marilyn Bergeron voluntarily ended her life. The Bergeron family is certain that this can be ruled out. And there are good reasons for this. First of all, Marilyn was apparently afraid of something or someone in Montreal. She clearly had enough will to live to move from Montreal back to Quebec. Her family is certain that Marilyn would never have returned home specifically to take her own life. And then there is Marilyn's vague statement that she got mixed up with the wrong people in Montreal. Marilyn's sister Natalie, in particular, has developed an ominous theory. She believes that her sister fell into the hands of a human trafficking ring, and that it all started in Montreal before she was kidnapped by someone in Quebec. This would be consistent with the fact that Marilyn was not only traveling on foot on the day of her disappearance. Either she took the bus or someone gave her a ride in a car. But she herself did not have access to a car and did not even have her driver's license with her. Something else stands out in the context of the video from the bank branch. Marilyn keeps looking around. In the direction Marilyn is looking, there is a large window front, and behind it is a parking lot. This suggests the theory that perhaps someone was waiting for Marilyn in a car in this parking lot. She never once looks at the man entering the ATM next to her. Instead, she looks exclusively out the window. Her parents cannot remember ever seeing the backpack that is on her shoulders in the video. Did someone else give Marilyn this backpack? That's just one of the dozens of questions Marilyn's friends and family still ask themselves today. In 2008, Marilyn's sister Natalie even quit her job so she could focus on searching for her sister. Of course, she can't replace a full-fledged investigation team, but she gives it her all. Together with her husband, she walks for hours through Quebec, talking to passers-by and showing them photos of Marilyn. She puts up missing person posters and keeps her eyes open, always hoping that she might finally find her beloved sister at any moment. When she fails to find her, Natalie keeps traveling. She searches for her sister in Montreal, New Brunswick, Vancouver, and every major city in Canada. She even sets up her own hotline for tips. Because the police do not do this themselves, the family manages the hotline and takes every tip personally. The family's vehemence also impresses the investigators. Over the years, various police departments have worked on the case from time to time. Thanks to the efforts of Marilyn's friends and family, the case is never completely closed, and the police follow up on promising leads. You're probably thinking that if there is camera footage from the ATM, then there must be footage from other places as well. For example, from Cafe Depot, so that they could check whether Marilyn was there alone or with someone else. Unfortunately, the police made the request too late. Cafes, restaurants, and shops had long since automatically deleted their camera footage. Instead, in this case, they had to rely on other things, such as witness statements. And in this case, there is one in particular that gives you goosebumps. December 2009. In the small Canadian town of Hawkesbury, the Salico couple are sleeping peacefully. Suddenly, there is a loud knock at their door. The couple wake with a start. It is the middle of the night, but the knocking does not stop. The Salicos go to the front door and open it, and are quite surprised to see a young woman standing in front of them. She is alone and looks completely distraught. Her hair is also dripping wet because it is pouring rain outside. Although it is the middle of December, she is only wearing a light jacket with a t-shirt, jeans, and high heels. The woman asks to use the couple's phone. They let the woman in and show her the landline phone. They also bring her towels so she can dry off and warm up a little. The woman dials a number, but no one answers. The woman doesn't try again. Instead, she asks the Salicos for directions to Chamberlain Street. The couple know the address, a quiet street with single-family homes just a few hundred meters away. Nevertheless, they immediately offer to drive her there. They don't feel comfortable sending this obviously distraught young woman back out into the rain in the middle of the night. But the stranger insists that she wants to walk and does not want to be driven to Chamberlain Street under any circumstances. She apologizes profusely for disturbing them in the middle of the night. Then, the woman disappears into the night again, just as suddenly as she appeared. The encounter is quite bizarre, especially because the young woman actually seemed quite normal once she was inside the house. Sure, she was crying and seemed frightened, but she wasn't high or drunk. The Salicos are certain of that. They never saw the young woman again after that nighttime encounter, but they never forgot this bizarre incident either. And in February 2010, it suddenly dawned on them. On television, on the second anniversary of Marilyn Bergeron's disappearance, a report about the missing woman was broadcast. And the Salicos were absolutely certain that this was the woman who had turned up at their house just 3 months earlier. She was blonde, not brown-haired like the woman on TV, but the resemblance was too strong. They immediately reported the matter to the police. As it turns out, Marilyn has dyed her hair blonde several times in the past. And above all, the Salicos are not the only ones in Hawkesbury who believe they saw Marilyn there after her disappearance. Even before the Salicos story is made public, several witnesses come forward. They all claim to have seen Marilyn in the small town from time to time over the past year, mostly in the company of a man. The residents had assumed that the two had simply moved to Hawkesbury recently. The family's lawyer speaks of a total of 20 credible tips from Hawkesbury. If at least some of the sightings are true, then Marilyn was still alive at least 22 months after her disappearance. Hawkesbury is a small town on the Ottawa River. Quebec, where Marilyn last lived, is almost 350 kilometers away, but her penultimate home, Montreal, is only about 100 kilometers away. All 3 cities are located along the waterway. Her family believes that the sightings in Hawkesbury are credible, and they fear that this means Marilyn is in trouble, that someone took her there for whatever reason. Perhaps it really has something to do with what Marilyn experienced in Montreal before her disappearance, with what frightened her so much. She told her friend Jonathan that it was worse than he could imagine, worse than murder. The question remains, what could be worse? Did someone force Marilyn to do things she couldn't talk about? Did someone threaten to harm her loved ones if she told anyone about her secret? Marilyn herself is said to have said that she fell in with the wrong crowd in Montreal. And unfortunately, the evidence in this case also gives exactly that impression. I don't know about you, but a lot of this really fits with the theory that Marilyn got involved in dangerous things and that's why she disappeared. The fear in Montreal, the hasty move to Quebec, the surveillance video from the ATM, the last purchase 20 kilometers from her previous location, even though she didn't have a car herself. And of course, the mysterious sightings in Hawkesbury. Today, there is a black box in Marilyn's room in her parents' house in Quebec. Inside are neatly wrapped Christmas presents. Marilyn has never been able to open any of them. Nevertheless, her parents have bought a present for their daughter every year since her disappearance in 2008. They wrap it in Christmas paper, decorate it with bows, and place it in the box with the other untouched packages. They are certain that Marilyn will come home one day and that the family will celebrate Christmas together again and make up for the lost Christmases. For 18 years now, her family has been ready around the clock to pick up their daughter at a moment's notice. Marilyn's room is unchanged. Her clothes are folded in the closets. Her bed is made. Only Marilyn herself is missing. I'm really excited to read your theories in the comments. Do you believe the police's initial instinct that Marilyn was in crisis and voluntarily ended it all? Or are there simply too many oddities for you to assume it wasn't a crime? If so, what could have happened here? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. By the way, a comment is valuable support for the channel. Otherwise, there's not much more to say. I wish you a nice morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you watch the video. See you in the next video. Ciao, everyone.